And we're back with another episode of the Pop Culture Cosmos. My name is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. I'm here along with my good friend, the man, the myth, the legend from Humanican Media. It's Josh Pederson. Josh, before we get into everything, what's going on with Humanican Media?
What up? What up? I have a new Super BS Gamescast coming at you on Monday, and I know we've played parts of it on here or are going to. What else? A new episode of What About This next week, and that's all that's on the plate right now.
Wow, that's a light week for you. I tell you, that's usually you're like stressed out and already getting gray hairs at your young age because of all the stuff that you got planned out going for the entire week.
Yeah, there are things in the pipeline, but I don't have any solid dates on anything yet, so I'll just leave it at that.
All right, but hopefully that will mean that you can provide us more written content on our great site, popculturecosmos.wordpress.com. I know I'm going to make an extra effort to put some written stuff there this week, including a review for the latest Guardians of the Galaxy. It did great numbers over the weekend. Josh, did you get a chance to see the movie this weekend?
I sure did. I saw it last night.
What were your initial thoughts as far as coming out of the theater, and what first hit you as far as seeing the movie overall? The big numbers came in, 150, almost 150 million coming in as far as through the entire weekend domestically, and it's now at well over 400 million worldwide. Looks like another big hit for Marvel. But when you were walking out of there, what were your initial thoughts?
My initial thoughts were the character I noticed that stood out the most was Drax. He had his time in the light for sure.
Again, that seems like two in a row for him because he was the one that really stood out in the first one as well.
Correct, and it was Drax and his relationship with Mantis.
Mantis, that's correct.
Yeah, that was a good thing. I wasn't too into Gamora and her sister's story arc,
Nebula,
and Baby Groot was funny. He was kind of a show stealer for me. Like that was I can see like why they went that route, because obviously, in the end of the last one, that scene alone like prompted many pop Funko figures and dancing plant Groots, and people ate it up. But
which I saw quite a bit out in Free Comic Book Day, and I'm sure everybody else did as well when they were out and about. But I tell you right now, and there's going to be some spoilers that we're probably going to be able to mix in here. So just warning everybody now as far as Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. But overall, did you think like I did that there was maybe some things that maybe held it back to being just as good as the first one?
Yeah, okay, so here are my initial thoughts on the movie as a whole. I didn't I wasn't as invested in it as I was the first one. Just the first one happened on such a massive scale, and we had that whole dynamic with them coming together and the relationships forming and the tensions there. And in this one, the tension, we didn't have to go through any of that, so it just kind of like dove right into the story. And Ego as a bad guy, I had a hard time with it because in the comic books, his story arc goes on for several issues, but they're trying to take all that and shove it into a 2-hour film. But the change that they make you like him, and then they just like that they expect you to dislike him, and I wasn't too into him as a character. Like he's crazy and whatnot, he's massive. It's just there wasn't a lot of like, because in Guardians 1 you had Thanos, and you had Ronan the Accuser, and you had Nebula, and all these people were trying to take out the Guardians of the Galaxy. But in this one, you had Ego, the Living Planet, and then they threw the Kree in there just for a good measure to make sure you're entertained by it still. And it was just it just wasn't as epic a movie on a grand scale as the first one was, but it was still enjoyable.
It was still had its great moments, especially at the end. The third act, I think, saved the film entirely. I had some issues with the pacing early on. I think it really got a little bit tedious and slow during the first and second parts. And also I had issues with, I guess, the planet that was saved initially, as far as, and all from the initial, as everybody's seen the clips as far as from the trailers and whatnot, but the initial threat that was saved upon I guess the planet that was governed over by Aisha. I think the crew that I guess that became mad, the whole planet as far as the forces, and then Aisha who got upset that the Guardians of the Galaxy, which I won't go too in depth as far as why, but they got I guess a little bit they did the planet wrong in the process of saving the planet in the first place. So they went out and I guess went after the Guardians of the Galaxy, but it really didn't turn out to be much as far as a threat, or just really just much of an interest, as far as there was kind of like just stopgaps along the way, as far as both in the early part and in the latter part of the film. What were your thoughts on the actual forces led by Aisha in the film? I just almost thought they didn't really care much about her character and the forces that she was leading.
It was weird because did you stay for the post-credit scenes, and they showed the like she had the assumption is that it's Adam Warlock that she has tied into that thing, but they introduced, like, because in the Marvel universe there are two not cosmic but alien races that really like strike fear into the hearts of these heroes that we all read about. They have the Skrull and the Kree. And the Kree were in Guardians of the Galaxy. That's who Aisha and her people were. But they kind of made a joke out of them. And that was not like, if they're going to be big baddies later on, they didn't do a very good job of setting it up. I'm sure James Gunn had a reason for doing what he did, but.
And making them almost, they were pretty much comedy fodder, especially with 80s arcade music attached to their entire fleet. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you got to check out the film just to see, that alone, if you remember those good old days at the arcade back in the 80s or whatnot. But it's just, I don't know, just they were kind of just like thrown in there and just really didn't provide much of a threat to the Guardians of the Galaxy or much interest as far as to the audience at large. They're largely forgettable, don't you think?
Yeah, and they even came off at times as being annoying. Like, I was completely uninterested in them, and they're just they're just there. They didn't have any other purpose except for being a distraction to them. It felt kind of busy to me.
It was their only purpose seemingly came after the credits, like you said, in the creation of what we assume is Adam Warlock in for the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which is already slated to return at some point in time down the road. But another thing, as far as, like I said, I had pacing issues with in the first and second act. I just thought the movie got too slow once it arrived at Ego's planet. I just thought, yes, there was a lot of relationship building, and I know you didn't particularly care for the sisterly relationship between Gamora and Nebula. I cared for it a little bit more than you did, but I understand your faults with that. I think you liked the Mantis Drax relationship a little bit more than I do, so it's an off balance thing. I think Drax, again played by Dave Bautista, was just outstanding with his timing and his comedic efforts. And I think that's one thing they did was they used, as I say in my article at popculturecosmos.wordpress.com, that if you can check out it, my full reviews there. I think they used comedy as sort of almost like a camouflage to get you across from point A to point Z, and to try and keep you interested in the film as a whole. So they used it almost as a crutch to try and make you continuously provide one-liners or little in-jokes or little visual jokes to keep you like breadcrumbs along the way to the ending scene. What were your thoughts as far as the use of comedy within Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2?
They can't exist without comedy, just because they're all so different. That's the whole like appeal to them. That's why people
But they took the jokes and the one-liners and things that they did in the first one, and they ratcheted it up by 10, which obviously was great because people were laughing in and out around the theater. But it almost seemed like they were using it as a crutch to get you from point A to point Z, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, there's definitely a lot of that going on, but it's like I mentioned earlier, like this on a grand scale, this movie was not as epic compared to the first one. So you had Ego, the Living Planet, you had the Kree, you had the Ravagers, and it wasn't, there wasn't like anything huge on the line. Like if you blinked, like you would have missed the fact that Ego is about to consume the entire universe. Whereas,
if you blinked, you would have realized that the Ravagers had exiled Yondu, and really, because they were barely in the film as well.
yeah, all this stuff is quick, 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 quick. But they had, in the first one, you had like there's actual, they had epic space battles. There's big thing with Thanos, Ronan the Accuser. There's these huge fight scenes, and there were consequences for it. Like there was, the galaxy was literally in danger. But like this, you really wouldn't have caught it. So I feel like because of the pace, they needed that comedy to keep. If it didn't have the comedy, nobody would really, it wouldn't have been a good movie.
I hear you, but I just thought it was used, like you said, it was needed to keep the film in place. But I could feel that every time you stopped laughing and you tried to take a look at the film as a whole, it was so intent on building those relationships for so long and so focused on doing it, it got in the way of the actual storytelling, and also as well, excitement and interest as a whole, because it just kind of waned in those first 2/3 of the film. And obviously it came to a climactic conclusion that actually was pretty good for even any of the Marvel films. But did you think overall, were you really at any point in time thinking that the Guardians of the Galaxy were actually done for at any point in time?
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's just one. Plus, they're going to be in Avengers Infinity War. They've already talked about that. So there wasn't really any care whether they're going to live or die. Whereas like in the standard Marvel universe, we don't know. Like we don't know what's going to happen to Iron Man or Captain America. So like we are legitimately concerned about this. But like, that's a problem with announcing all these movies like so many years ahead of their release date. You stop caring because it's going to lead to something bigger. You'll still watch it to fill in the gaps, but you're not as emotionally invested in the characters.
Now, were you surprised that they actually killed off someone that's very familiar to fans of Guardians of the Galaxy at near the end of the actual film? That something that I was kind of that was the only real thing that stood out. I was kind of surprised that a relationship that we didn't think existed did exist, as far as from a sense that trying to, once the ego thing didn't really work out for Peter Quills, he became knowledgeable about something else as far as from a different type of relationship, but it ended up costing a life. And did that kind of surprise you as far as how that came about?
I mean, when I saw Zondu in the Yondu, sorry, in the trailers, I kind of knew that was going to happen, because they ended on a good note in the last movie. There wasn't like a lot of, he ripped them off and took the Infinity Stone, but there wasn't, you weren't expecting them, because he laughed, so you weren't expecting there to be like a big battle between the two of them. But as soon as they show that opening scene with him all depressed and he's pulling his pants up and he's, in that brothel, you kind of knew that it was going towards that inevitable conclusion with them.
I like the fact that they did give him some time in the sun, as far as developing his character and within the course of the Ravagers. But the Ravagers part of it was just so barely touched upon, including the reasons why he was at one time exiled, that it kind of left me with, maybe I wanted to find out more in that context with that film, exactly what was going on with their part of the story. But again, the movie was centered on trying to break up, reunite, and also focus more on the relationships between the main Guardians of the Galaxy characters, that I understand some things had to take a back seat. So all in all, if you were to go ahead and say, give a final, I should say, outcome or review or thoughts on the movie itself, and recommendation or not recommend it to someone, what are your final words on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2?
I would say it's a fun movie. It's definitely a fun movie. I don't regret watching it, and I had a great time watching it. It was entertaining, made me laugh. Don't go into it expecting the type of movie you saw in the first one. Just go into it expecting to be entertained. Like, don't create expectations. Don't be like those people who are actually like upset that it's not as good as the first one, because it stands on its own, but it's just not as massive a movie as the first one was.
I couldn't agree with you more. If you are going in there expecting Guardians of the Galaxy, which I was expecting something really complete. I didn't quite get it. It seemed to me like 3/4 of the way there. But there's certainly plenty of humor that's very good, that hits very well with audiences that I particularly enjoyed. But again, there were some lapses in those first and second parts, which didn't bring me all the way back, even with a very good third act to close out the film. So it does get a passing grade for me as well. Is it matching Guardians of the Galaxy, the original? No, but it's definitely, like you said, a very watchable film in its own right. I do recommend everybody out there giving it a shot, and especially if they want to see as far as the what's going on within the element of the Guardians of the Galaxy. That's a great way to familiarize yourself with their characters. If you're looking for more hints as far as for the Infinity War, or for sets up for the future for maybe some of the other Marvel films, doesn't really do that much for it. Maybe outside of Thor Ragnarok, a small amount, but for the Guardians of the Galaxy universe, or galaxy, what have you, it definitely sets up that film indeed, for the third film in the series. So what are your thoughts out there on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2? Let us know at any point in time if you wish. That's popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Also, as well, Pop Culture Cosmos, Humanican Media, and Game Source on Facebook and Twitter as well. When we come back, we're going to be talking to the people from the TV Ratings Guide. They're going to be on the show talking about all the latest goings on in the TV world. I've got Jess and also let me look this up real quick. Forgot. Where's it at? Hold on here. Jess and Jonathan, that's right, came by from the TV Ratings Guide. We truly appreciate them doing so. As far as checking out our program, to stop by with their thoughts, and as far as the TV ratings scene is concerned, they'll also be on our Friday program. That's the PCC Multiverse, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific on the Podcast Radio Network. And you can catch all of our Pop Culture Cosmos shows, the Pop Culture Cosmos show and the PCC Multiverse, on any downloadable outlet that we're on, including Google Play, iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, Podcast.com, Mixcloud, the ESO Network, the Tangibound Network, and the Gonna Geek Network as well. And I'm just so proud of myself that I actually remembered it all without even having to write it down at this point in time. So yeah. But anyways, if you do download our shows, just want to let you know we try very hard to attach one of the outstanding podcasts that either Rob McCallum Films, Humanican Media, Game Source, Wine, Women, and Words, or also as well, who am I forgetting? Anybody I'm forgetting?
I don't think so. Mine ones were Rob McCallum, Retro City Games.
Yeah. Humanican Media. Yeah. See, I was so happy with just remembering all the actual download outlets. I want to make sure that we didn't forget anybody else.
Forgot, yeah.
Yes, but if you do download our shows, you do get a bonus episode podcast from one of those great entities, and we just truly appreciate them, and obviously you as well, Josh from Humanican Media, allowing us to go ahead and share those as well. But coming up first, right after the break, is actually going to be the TV Ratings Guide. They're going to be joining us here in a bit. But we also have as well a great song from Chad and Hyper Schmidt. This is Forsaken, and you're listening to Forsaken right here on the Pop Culture Cosmos. All right, and we're back with the Pop Culture Cosmos show. My name is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos, and I'm here along with my good friend, the man, the myth, the legend behind Humanity Media. It's Josh Pederson. Again, check out our shows every Monday night, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific on the Podcast Radio Network, and also the PCC Multiverse, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, also on the Podcast Radio Network. And if you have if you miss an episode, it's no problem. You can download all of our episodes at any point in time on Google Play, iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, podcast.com, Mixcloud, the ESO Network, the Tangible Network, the Gonna Geek Network as well. And you can download, when you do download it, you also get a bonus episode from Humanity Media, Game Source, Rob McCallum Films, and Wine Women at Words as well. One of those shows will be added onto it as a bonus just for listening. So I ask you, you are the man, the myth, the legend as far as Humanity Media, but you're also a huge Game of Thrones fan. Are you not, Josh?
Yeah, I dabble in that.
Yeah, dabbling is an understatement of the day. But I ask you this, have you heard the news that HBO is so in love with the show, which will actually end next season, with a abbreviated or truncated, a number of episodes, that it is actually going in a process in development, are actually going about doing another maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 spin-off shows. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what they were talking about. I'm not too fond of the ideas that they were putting out there, though.
So what were some of the ideas shared with our audience, exactly what they could be possibly thinking about as spin-offs for the Game of Thrones?
Well, one was, like Robert's Rebellion. They wanted to talk about that, which could be interesting. Another one was talking about Bronn and Jaime having like their own little buddy thing. I guess depending on how Jaime's story ends with Game of Thrones, that might be something. But I wouldn't be too interested in it. And then another one was it was based on one of the. I haven't read the little side stories that George R. R. Martin has put out there, but one of them was based on that. And then another idea was to show the fall of Valyria, which could be really interesting because I know they briefly talk about it, or they have a couple chapters in the last book that talks about it. And in the show, they have one episode, where the stone guys jump up on the boat and Jorah catches the, I forget what the stone disease is called. But yeah, that could be interesting because it's just, Game of Thrones is kind of like, we're at the point now where magic is being reintroduced into this society. And back then in Valyria, magic was, it wasn't technology or weaponry, it was magic. Like magic was ruled over everything. You had magic dragons as your typical Lord of the Rings type deal. But yeah, that would be the only one I'm interested in. I'm not a huge fan of prequels, though. I'll put it out there. I don't like prequels. Once a story moves forward, I don't like to go backwards because, especially in books, I've already, they've given a lot of detail about what happened before. So it's just one of those things,
But if that's the case, so you weren't a big fan of doing the Rogue One and then the Han Solo films and all that?
Yeah, I liked Rogue One. I don't know, if you were to ask me if I wanted something that came before, something that came after, I'd probably say after. But I don't regret watching Rogue One. It was well done and the story was good.
Well, if they want to do spin-off films, they don't really have much of a choice unless it was something at this current, let's say, Star Wars: The Force Awakens. They would do something maybe with the fighters after they left, the planet being destroyed or something along that same time frame. They could do something like that, but it's so much easier to take from all the information and all the stories and all the things that they left or they briefly alluded to within the Star Wars framework universe, correct?
Oh yeah, and don't get me wrong, like I'll watch Star Wars no matter what. It could be, I wouldn't want to watch this, but even if they had like a spinoff on Watto, I'd still probably go to see it. But
just prequels as a whole is just
prequels as a whole. I have a hard time with. I watch some, but I don't like to go backwards. Like, for example, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, great movie, but I would have much rather wanted to see what happened to Harry Potter after the Battle of Hogwarts instead of what happened in the Wizarding world back in the 20s. I mean, that's just my personal taste, though, when it comes to storytelling.
I don't blame you driving in that minivan all over the place. Correct, because he became the soccer dad.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, that's true.
That would have been kind of cool, an entity like rises up from the soccer field and is threatening the entire,
just expecting
world. And
Patronums.
there you go. He pulls out of the soccer bag right there, dude. But anyways,
but plot twist, it's actually Hermione's bag that never ends. So he's like, oh crap, my wand's in here somewhere, but I can't find it.
Exactly. He pulls out everything else. But I can understand your hesitancy in regards to prequels as a whole. I know for a lot of times that it seems to be Hollywood's way of reaching into something and trying to beat it until there's really nothing left to give as far as from a franchise is concerned. I know when it concerns like for instance, the Fast and the Furious and the way they've gone back and forth in time frames as far as in previous iterations is kind of, I know from it's kind of hard for anybody to follow that, and throwing a prequel into the mix there would be even more difficult. And then I guess the obvious question is with the massive advertising that's being done, what are your thoughts on the continuing prequels from the Alien thing? Because Ridley Scott has said that Aliens 5 is not happening anytime soon.
I think that with Alien, they can get away with it just because same thing with Star Wars, just because the properties are so old and it literally spans 2 generations of people that you can get away with something like that. And especially since Alien, like not a lot of people, like obviously us, like we're huge fans of those movies, but you ask a lot of like younger kids, hey, do you like Alien? Do you like Predator? They're going to be like, no. And if they do, they're going to be talking about whatever the most recent one in the franchise was. So I think with older properties, they can get away with that kind of thing. I'm not a huge fan of how they keep giving away everything about the new Alien movie. Like I'm so scared that by the time I go to actually watch it, that I'm gonna have seen it, because they put so many clips, so many trailers, so many little prequel videos. It's just, it has me concerned.
So Alien Covenant, you're definitely worried about that. But if you were running HBO, and I always like to put you in the situation where you're always leading these big companies and whatnot, but if you were running HBO and you wanted to go ahead and bleed that Game of Thrones towel dry, wringing that out, and you wanted to go ahead and make something in that universe, what would you be doing? Do you have any good show ideas that you think might be worth watching or might bring even more success to the Game of Thrones realm?
I would want to see, I know I just went on this rant about prequels, but I would want to see how the fall of the first men, like how the White Walkers came about, the Children of the Forest, what happened to them. And I would love to see something after Game of Thrones, but it's hard for me to say that because I don't know how it's going to end yet. The books haven't gone that far, and neither has the show. But I would love to see like the Children of the Forest, because there's a lot of mythology in there, and it would be interesting to know how it happened. Or Mance Rayder's rebellion. How did the people how did he get away from the taking the black and doing all that stuff? So there's a lot of interesting avenues to explore. But if I were the showrunners, like I would explore old Valyria. Like people like magic. That's the that was the big appeal with Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter. Obviously, people like magic. They like to be taken to fantastical worlds. Game of Thrones is dark, and obviously they'll probably put some magic back into it. But there's these rich worlds that he talks about in the books. Like George R. Martin goes into detail about what Valyria was like, what the first men, when they came from wherever it is they came from, what that world was like. And I think that could be a visually stunning show to watch.
Definitely, that's a great idea indeed. If any of you out there have ideas for a spinoff for the Game of Thrones and you don't think HBO is going to hear you, or if you don't you have your thoughts on prequels as a whole. If you like them, don't like them, send us your thoughts our way, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Also, as well, Pop Culture Cosmos on Facebook, Game Source, and also Humanican Media on Facebook and Twitter as well. Well, when we come back, we're going to wrap up the show with our thoughts on on a little show that's coming our way that ABC is going to try it again with another shot at the Marvel Universe, and we're going to see if Josh is thinking a little bit more human about Inhumans when we're coming up right after the break. This is the Pop Culture Cosmos. And we're back with Pop Culture Cosmos. We're going to close it out here on the Pop Culture Cosmos show. My name is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. I'm here along with my good friend, the man, the myth, the legend behind Humanican Media. It's Josh Pederson. And Josh, before we head on out today, want to make sure everybody's up to date. Even though it's going to be a lighter week, they still need to know what's going on with Humanican Media.
Sorry, hold on. My dog's scratching his neck. Okay. This week with Humanican Media, we have a new Super BS coming at you on tomorrow. We're going to play clips on this show, I think.
That's correct. Yeah, it played earlier today.
And we will have a Saturday. I'm recording a new episode of What About This? And there are some other things coming up here, but I don't have any for sure dates or anything set. So you'll know when I know.
Definitely some great things indeed. Check out Humanican Media on YouTube, on Facebook, and also Twitter as well. And they've got channels on Podbean. And where else you got it? Podcast.com.
Google Play, Overcast FM, YouTube, Facebook. I think it's on other stuff. I think like once I put the RSS feed into something, because it's popping up on all kinds of like Google searches. So I don't, you can just put into Google and you'll find it, I'm sure.
Well, that's some great things indeed. That's Humanican Media. Check it out today and all their great stuff. And like I said, we also throw some of their stuff on the Pop Culture Cosmos networks. Josh and I, coordinate that as well. So before we head on out, we got to talk a little bit about the Inhumans. And I know we were talking about it at some point in time early in our tenure here at the Pop Culture Cosmos show about the Inhumans at one time being a film that was going to be earmarked for motion picture release right around 2020, 2021, all that. And it was part of that next phase of the Marvel Universe. But it has seemingly been squashed and now reborn again as a television series coming to not Netflix, to ABC. So I ask you, Josh, is the third time going to be a charm? Because Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has had its up and downs. Agent Carter's had tremendous ups and then also a lot of serious downs and is no longer actually on the air. So I ask you, Josh, what are your thoughts on the Inhumans coming to ABC? And could you give a little bit of background to people on the Inhumans that are being represented in this upcoming fall series?
See, Inhumans is a property I've never really explored that much, just what I've seen and like what I've read in like Ultimate Comics. The Inhumans are, if you've been watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., they've been exploring that arc with the crystals or whatever that I forget what those things are called, but it's basically went into the ocean. Like all people are consuming fish oil pills and they're developing powers, kind of their version of mutants. But the Inhumans, like as far as like Black Bolt and the other, his family, they're a royal family and they've been hidden from the world. They choose not to intervene in the affairs of man because they think man's not ready for what it is they are. I'm not.
But something's actually going on within the Inhumans universe that's causing a lot of friction and maybe turmoil and maybe a little bit that might necessitate exactly them having to interact with the rest of the world.
Yeah, correct. I haven't been keeping up with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., so I really have no idea what's going on besides the fact that there are now robots and Ghost Rider and stuff like that. The show as a whole, I'm not too interested in it, to be completely honest. Like, I think with ABC, like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has its ups and downs, but Ghost Rider looks cool, but the shows that have been on ABC, just they're not as they're not as quality as like something that's on Netflix or in the MCU, obviously, which costs more money. But and just from what I saw of the costume, you saw the pictures, right, online. The costumes look very like 80s-ish. Like it looks like something you'd see in like the 80s in an 80s Marvel flick. And so that has me concerned. The budget,
which is a surprise because Disney, ABC, they, Disney owns ABC, and you think you would want your property of Marvel and your property of ABC to get the best quality output of each, correct?
you'd think, and especially since this is such a limited run series, like I think they're doing 10 episodes, if I'm correct, 10 or 12. Yeah, something like that. You'd think that they'd be pumping more money into it, but it looks, from the stills that I've seen and the descriptions, it looks and sounds really cheesy.
And it almost looks like a miniseries, almost like, for instance, V, the miniseries. That always comes to mind when I'm thinking about this, as far as the limited run and whatnot. Obviously, it's not going to be down that same path, but it looks like it's just not going to be able to be that upper echelon series that we were hoping that ABC would produce, because the network as a whole needs that kind of boost going on for its overall status, don't you think?
Right, and because I was expecting a lot from this, just because it's originally started out as a Marvel film, like it was slated to be released in the Marvel universe, and then it dropped down. It like completely surpassed Netflix and dropped down to an ABC show, and now I'm really concerned about what this is going to be. Like I'm gonna have to wait and see. I'll probably watch the first episode, but I'm worried about it. I don't think it's going to be the thing everyone thinks it's going to be.
Well, if that's the case, at least you're shooting in Hawaii, so it can't be all that bad. So when production's in Hawaii, how bad can it actually be? So I know, as far as from a presentation standpoint, I'm hoping it will be something that definitely people will want to watch. I hope it's something that I want to watch, that I would be looking forward to, because I know a lot of people have been looking forward to each and every Netflix show that's been on the air. But when it comes to the ABC Marvel universe, it's not been exactly that same home run that they've had on other outlets, would be it the movies or Netflix. Everybody, what are your thoughts out there on Marvel's Inhumans? Is it going to be something that you're going to catch come this fall, or is this going to be something that you're going to be running away from and checking out other Marvel properties instead? Let us know your thoughts. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com also as well. Pop Culture Cosmos, Humanican Media, and Game Source on Facebook and Twitter as well. Well, it's been a great episode. We had the Super BS Gamescast on earlier, and also Jonathan and Jess from the TV Ratings Guide and TVRatingsGuide.com. You want to check out their great site. Every day they provide stories, reviews, and a whole lot of opinions on the world of television, whether it's ABC, CBS, NBC, CW, Fox, just all the major channels. They do provide coverage on exactly which shows are hot, which shows are not, and which shows are precariously in the middle that could go either way between renewal or cancellation. Definitely a great site to check out indeed. That's the TVRatingsGuide.com. So we truly appreciate them joining us on the show, and look forward to our conversation with them on the Friday evening show as well, the PCC Multiverse, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific on the Podcast Radio Network. So, Josh, any last thoughts on the way out? I mean, it's been a great weekend with Guardians of the Galaxy. Again, I guess meeting expectations, right in between the 140, 160 that was expected. So it's definitely doing well and off to a great start. We thought the movie as a whole was worth watching, despite some issues here and there. It's not as good as the first one, but definitely a watchable movie in its own right. Any last thoughts on exactly the weekend as a whole?
No, I mean, King Arthur's coming out this weekend, right? That's exciting.
I knew you were going to say that, and I was going to say to you, let's hold off that talk for our Friday discussion, because that's going to probably be one of our big topics of conversation then. So if you want to know more about Josh's thoughts on King Arthur, as far as that movie coming out, you want to wait for our Friday program, indeed, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific on the Podcast Radio Network, and then all of our other downloadable outlets as well. But I know you're looking for that one. I I just hope that it's going to be everything that you're asking for. I know my wife is very interested to see the film as well. But any other last thoughts before we head on out?
No, yeah, just follow us on Facebook, YouTube, do the social media thing. You know, we got Humanica Media, Pop Culture Cosmos, a lot of great content, a lot of great content coming up. So, you know, the future is bright at the moment. You know, unless it gets snuffed for some reason. But yeah, there's a lot of good content coming your way. Stay tuned. Thanks for the support. Help us doing our thing.
The future's so bright, you got to wear shades.
Whoa.
Indeed. Well, that's going to do it for our show today. We thank you so much for being a part of the Pop Culture Cosmos, indeed. And just check us out again every Monday and Friday for our shows. And we thank you so much for being a part each and every week as we go ahead and continue on this journey through the pop culture cosmos. So for Josh Pederson, this is Gerald Glassford. It's another beautiful day in paradise here in the pop culture cosmos. We thank you for listening. And here's hoping you have yourself a great day.